Good morning, Year 3. It's Miss Callaghan with your literacy lesson on Tuesday, the 2nd of March 2020. Please take some time now to write the date and today's learning objective to analyse a narrative into your literacy book. Pause the video if you need more time to do this, and then press play when you're ready to continue. Yesterday, for SPAG, we started looking at prepositions. Can anyone remember what prepositions can describe? There are 3 different things that prepositions can be used to describe. Hopefully you all said place, we was doing that one yesterday, time and cause. Today we're going to be doing time prepositions. I want you to think about the school day. What do we do at different times? At 8:30, you come into school. At lunchtime, you eat your dinner and play. On Monday, Wednesday and Friday, we have assembly. And at 2:45 p.m, you go home. These 4 phrases are all time prepositions. Let's have a look at these options and see which sentence they fit best. The first sentence, I like to go swimming. At 1 o'clock. Possibly couldn't go at 1 o'clock because some days you have school at 1 o'clock. At the weekend or on Saturday. We could go swimming at either of those times. Let's have a look at the next sentence. I will have lunch at school at 1 o'clock, at the weekend or on Saturday. This one has to be at 1 o'clock because we don't come to school at the weekend or on a Saturday. Finally, after a week at school, I can have a rest at the weekend or on Saturday. Again, either of these could work in this sentence, but I think the most appropriate preposition is at the weekend, which means I like to go swimming on Saturday would be our sentence. Do you agree? Sometimes you can use more than one different preposition for your sentence. Choosing to be not very specific, for example saying in the morning, or you can be even more specific by using a set time. For example, at 8 a.m. Today's SPAG challenge is to write a sentence using a time preposition. Mild, your preposition is on Monday. Spicy, the preposition is at the weekend. And hot, you need to write a sentence with the preposition in 10 years' time. Pause the video while you do your SPAG starter and press play when you have finished your sentence. Today's learning objective is to analyse a narrative. What is a narrative? It is a spoken or written account of connected events, or it's commonly called a story. So we're going to be reading and analysing a story. The genre of the story that we're going to be reading is adventure. We're going to be looking at adventure stories. The title of the story is The Island of No Return. Just from the title and the picture, can you predict what the story might be about? This skull and crossbones looks a little bit intimidating. Somehow I don't think this narrative's going to be happy all the way through. Shall we read it together to find out? In your pack you should have a copy. You can follow along with your finger while I read. Early Saturday morning, Tony raced to the car. "Hurry up, Dad!" he yelled, yanking at the door handle impatiently. "Goodness me, calm down. We will be at Grandpa's in no time," Dad replied with bemusement. During the short car journey, Tony fidgeted with excitement, reminiscing on his past adventures with Grandpa. He couldn't wait to get in the radio flyer for another exhilarating journey. As they pulled up, Grandpa was already waiting outside the house. Tony threw himself out of the car into his arms, screaming with glee. "Please be safe, boys. Don't get up to any mischief," Dad shouted as he drove away. Tony and Grandpa smiled cheekily at each other. "What's life without a little mischief?" said Grandpa. You might have figured out that this story is based on taking flight. It talks about the same characters, Dad, Tony and Grandpa. You can also tell that this is after taking flight, because Tony is reminiscing on his past adventures with Grandpa. He's remembering his past adventures with the escaped zoo monkeys, in the jungle, in space. In this story, his feelings are completely different. He's really excited and can't wait to see Grandpa. We know this by his actions. Tony raced to the car, yanking at the door handle impatiently. Couldn't wait to get the door open. And Dad is a little bit bemused, he replied with bemusement. He's puzzled why Tony's so excited to go to Grandpa's. The author of this story is giving hints to what might happen. Another exhilarating journey, perhaps. Maybe Grandpa and Tony will get up to a little bit of mischief. Let's read on to find out. The old red wagon gleamed in the sun. Fearlessly, Tony climbed in while fastening the helmet to his head. Expecting to hear the sound of wheels on the pavement, Tony's mouth dropped open in surprise when he heard the gentle splash of water. He rotated around to look at Grandpa. They were in a giant submarine, entirely submerged by a dazzling turquoise ocean. Peeking through the window, they saw a gorgeous green turtle swim by through the bright coral. Grandpa gestured towards the periscope. "Can you see any land?" he asked, taking hold of the old wooden steering wheel. Tony looked through the periscope glass. The radio flyer, or the old red wagon, has transformed into a submarine. This is a method of transportation that goes underneath the sea, entirely underwater. It has a periscope poking out of the top. This is a long, tall tube that pokes out of the submarine, which has mirrors inside so that people can see out above the surface of the water. I wonder what Tony could see through the periscope glass. I think I can see an island," Tony stuttered. "It looks abandoned. I hope there are no pirates." He could see the golden sandy beach and palm trees swaying gently in the sea breeze. Grandpa opened the hatch so they could climb out and swim to shore. The salty smell of the ocean engulfed them, whilst they swam through the clear, gentle sea. As they got closer, they began to see a strange drawing underneath the idyllic palm trees. It was a skull and crossbones. Tentatively, Tony reached out and touched the drawing. This part of the story paints a picture in your mind. It's describing the setting. The golden sandy beach, using adjectives golden and sandy. Tells you about what you can see, palm trees swaying gently in the sea breeze. Tells you about what you can smell, the salty smell of the ocean. but they spot a strange drawing underneath the idyllic palm trees. Idyllic means something extremely perfect and beautiful to look at. So far, the reader has painted a picture of a beautiful tropical island. But I've got a feeling something's about to go wrong. Crash! Immediately, rain cascaded down like a waterfall. The rumbles caused by the clouds awakened the sea. It began to transform as its waves became big and intimidating. They looked around in amazement. In the shadows they saw something moving. Someone was hiding in the trees. Just then a real-life pirate appeared. "Tony, run!" bellowed Grandpa. "It's Captain Blackeye!" Petrified by the fearsome pirate, Tony's legs turned to jelly. What would happen to them? Captain Blackeye was one of the most cunning and dangerous pirates of all time, according to the stories. He was ruthless and showed little in the way of mercy. If any fellow pirates would ever cross him, they would disappear without a trace. As fierce storm clouds gathered, the sky became obscured by darkness. All that could be seen was one terrifying blood-red eye, the other obscured by an eye patch. The pirate's booming laugh echoed across the cold sand. Suddenly, Tony felt his legs disappear from under him, kicked forcefully by Blackeye's wooden leg. Without warning, he was thrown into a dark, damp sack. "Ah!" cried Grandpa as he received the same fate. Goodness gracious, what's going to happen to Tony and Grandpa? Captain Blackeye does not sound like a nice man. The character description that the author writes about him makes him sound terrifying. A blood-red eye, the other obscured by an eye patch. What's happened to his other eye? A wooden leg which he uses to kick Tony. And we know he's got a track record. He was one of the most cunning and dangerous pirates of all times. He's made other pirates disappear without a trace. All of a sudden, the beautiful island doesn't seem so safe after all. Tony and Grandpa could do nothing but scream as the sacks were carried to an unknown destination, jostling and shaking them menacingly. "How dare you come to the island of no return?" Captain Blackeye snarled as he dumped them out of the sacks onto the hard wooden floor. They looked around. They were trapped on a colossal pirate ship. Torn black sails, emblazoned with a giant skull and crossbones, billowed in the wind. The stench of rotten fish and seaweed turned their stomachs. In this section there's some really ambitious vocabulary, so let's look at it together. Jostling is an action. It's a verb to describe how Tony was carried in the sack. Roughly, he was being chucked around. And there's an adverb here, menacingly. This means it happened with the threat of danger. Tony and Grandpa are dumped out of their sacks on a colossal pirate ship. This means huge. The ship was gigantic. And it had torn black sails, emblazoned with a giant skull. It had a giant skull on the material, which billowed in the wind. The sails flapped around in the wind. And again, the authors used their senses to try and paint a picture. Only this time it's talking about the stench of rotten fish and seaweed, which isn't a very nice picture. I know I wouldn't want to be trapped on this pirate ship. "Walk the plank!" growled Captain Blackeye. "Straight into the shark-infested water." Talking of water, Grandpa grabbed a weathered rope dangling from the vast ship's sail and swung back onto the ship, knocking the pirate into the ocean with a huge splash. Hooray! Cheered Tony. They were safe. Tony and Grandpa hugged with jubilant delight. Phew! Grandpa to the rescue. We can tell by the language that the authors used that they were happy to be safe. They hugged with jubilant delight. They feel great happiness and triumph after defeating Captain Blackeye. The problem has been resolved. Let's get home before your dad starts worrying about us, Grandpa said. As they climbed off the ship, they couldn't resist taking a souvenir, since Captain Blackeye's treasure chest lay open and unprotected. Tony and Grandpa pocketed a shiny gold medallion to remind them of their dramatic voyage. Let's never return to this island, Tony sighed, exhausted. The ending was happy after all. The authors told you what will happen next. They're going to return home and never visit the island ever again. I hope you all enjoyed that adventure narrative. Now that we've read through it carefully, we need to look back and identify the features. Narrative stories have 6 main parts. The title, to make the reader want to read the story. Can you remember the title of our narrative? It was called The Island of No Return. Did that make you want to read the story? It made me want to read and find out why it was the Island of No Return. Did people disappear, or did they not want to go back? The next part is the beginning of a narrative. This is to introduce the characters and the setting. Can you look through your reading now and see if you can spot where the beginning is? Pause the video while you do this, point to the beginning, and then press play when you're ready to see if you got it correct. The beginning is the first 2 paragraphs. In the first paragraph, you're introduced to the characters, Tony, Dad, and Grandpa. And in the second paragraph, there is a setting description. The author describes the tropical island that Grandpa and Tony have gone to. In your literacy book, you either need to cut and stick this table or make a neat copy with your ruler so that you can complete it while we're going along. I have put a tick that I've found at the beginning. I've identified this feature and I've given some information. I've told you who the characters are, Tony, Grandpa and Dad, and what the setting is. The setting is a tropical island. You might also want to use some of the adjectives that the author used to describe the island in this section. The next part is the build-up. This is where the author gives little hints and clues about what's going to happen in the story. Can you read through the narrative and find any hints or clues in the build-up section? When you have found a clue, you're going to write it in your table. After the build-up, there is a dilemma where something goes wrong. What is the problem that happens in this story? Find it in your reading. Check the box when you found it and write what the problem is. After you have found the dilemma, we're going to move on to the resolution, where the characters solve the dilemma. Grandpa helps to resolve the problem. He grabs a rope dangling from the ship's sail, swings around and knocks Captain Blackeye into the ocean. So you could summarise this in that section. And finally, the narrative needs an ending to say what the characters will do next. Can you find the ending? And give an example of what the author says the characters will do next. Pause the video to take some time to complete this table now. Remember, this should be in your literacy book. And you should be using examples where you can to give extra detail of what happens in each part of the narrative. The author of this narrative has used a range of sentences in their writing. I would like you to try and find an example of each. You need to find some speech. You will be able to tell that it is speech as it will be punctuated by inverted commas. A question sentence, which includes a question mark, an exclamation sentence with an exclamation mark, such as "We were trapped. Help!" A statement, for example, "The old red wagon gleamed in the sun." This tells you something. And a command sentence, where there is an instruction telling someone to do something. For example, turn the steering wheel. Finally, you need to find a compound sentence containing a conjunction. Here there's a compound sentence using the conjunction so. Read through the text, find an example of each and write these in your literacy book underneath your table. Finally, you have a Choose a Chili challenge to complete. The mild challenge is to find adjectives in the story. The spicy challenge is to try and use expanded noun phrases in the narrative. And the hot challenge is to try and find the adverbs that I used in the story. If you are stuck on these word classes, I've left a little hint telling you what each type is. For the rest of today's literacy time, please complete these tasks nice and neatly in your books. Well done everyone, keep working hard. Bye, see you tomorrow.